Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFP podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin. Familia, it's the NFL Insider Series. We're going to Cheesehead Country. Familia, this one's gonna be lit. This one's gonna be lit. And you guys know I'm lactose intolerant, so let's make sure we don't have any problems. So I'm gonna take a lactate right now and make sure we get a good episode. But also want to make sure that when you're going to YouTube, you're watching us on YouTube right now. If you haven't already, please give us a like and subscribe. We'll really appreciate it. Gosh, I mean, there's so much. Set those notification up. Get more of these NFL insiders that are giving you that great information about each team. You're going to learn so much between now and the start of training camp, so that you'll be all up to speed, and then you'll be ready. You'll be ready for the season and your fantasy football drafts. And also, I want to make sure when you're going to Underdog Fantasy, hit that promo code Familia23. Okay, Familia 23 if you want to do it in Spanish. Underdog Fantasy is going to match you the first $100. Okay, and so you put in $100, they're going to match you an extra $100, and you're going to play best ball. There's best ball mania happening. Puppies are happening. Dalmatians. I mean, name the dog, and they've got a contest around it. So, and it's not only football. You could do baseball. You could do daily best ball drafts. You can already start NBA baseball drafts. You know, the NBA draft is happening. So get to Underdog Fantasy and also use that promo code Familia23. Familia, as I mentioned, this is always one of my favorite episodes because when I started the series two years ago, our amigo Dusty Evely said yes right off the bat, and we've continued to correspond all this time, and not just here. And a lot of times it's about Mexican food, and sometimes it's about football.
It's always about tacos. It's pretty much always about tacos.
Oh, but it's a beautiful thing. Quick shout out to some of my Packer fans out there. Patricio, you know who you are. Also my primos, Mikey and Brian, and also Kevin T. Oh gosh, I mean, Familia. This one's a good one. So let's welcome him in. He works for Cheesehead TV, Packer Report, Pack a Day podcast, even on Christmas. So that's how dedicated he is. So let's welcome in our amigo, our compadre, Dusty Evely. Dusty, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Estás en tu casa, mi amigo.
Thanks for having me, man. I always look forward to this. This is, I think, the one fantasy football thing I do every year is I talk to you, because I am not good at fantasy football, but I enjoy talking to you, and this feels like this works out well. So yeah, thanks for having me on again, man. This is a blast.
Well, we learned. We learned so much because one of the things that I think people misjudge about fantasy analysis is it really needs to be. You're really breaking down football and breaking it down. You break it down for certain ways, and really, I learned so much from you, and actually, that's why I keep that's why I keep following you, and occasionally I'll hit you back, but we're gonna jump into it. Every 15 years or so, what the Packers change from a Hall of Fame quarterback and go to the next guy. So it's I know people talk about what's love got to do it. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. I'm gonna go Beatles. All you need is love. And I've got the question mark. Jordan Love. The Jordan Love era is here, and when you're looking at it, and actually you did a great breakdown last year, a really intense film breakdown on the game where he came in against the Eagles. And you went throw for throw, and obviously one of them was Christian Watson turned into like a zigzag, monster touchdown. But from watching that, I know you can learn so much, and I know you learned so much. Can you kind of break down a little bit of from what you've seen and what you've heard through camp and everything, mini camp and OTAs? Where is he, and could he be good? Mm.
I sure hope so. I mean, the tricky thing with him is, I mean, you talk about that Eagles game, and it was, I think he had 9 throws. I think he had it was 10 or 11 dropbacks. I think he had one scramble or something, and his completion percentage was somewhere like 62%. It could have been higher. He had one of his best throws of the day was to Aaron Jones, right up the right side of that was dropped. But
Oh,
I think that one of the things with Love, and so you're taking this like 9 snap thing and going, can we work off of this? Like that's the question you're trying to answer, and really you're saying, well, no, not really, because it's 9 steps, but also you kind of look at where he came before that. So he went to college, Utah State, and came, it was like the spreadiest of spread, air radius of air radius systems. They ran, it was strictly shotgun. I think like 99, 100% of their snaps were in shotgun, at least his last 2 years there, from what I watched. Everything was 11 personnel. So it's one running back, one tight end, with the tight end split out wide. So it's shotgun, single back, and then they ran like 6 concepts. They're running 4 verts, they're running Y cross, they're running mesh, they're running the same things over and over again. And so I mean, I say all that to say, like, the footwork is different in there, especially in air raid system, getting very general with all this stuff. It's not timing based necessarily. It's you're looking matchups pre snap, and then a lot of those routes adjust based on where those guys are. So it's not, I hit my fifth, I drop back on the third step, I would hit here, like classic West Coast system. I'm dropping back. If this guy's open on my third step, I hit. If he's not open, I switch over to here. I got fifth step, I hit. If not, I go 7th step, I hit. If not, then I buy time. Like that, kind of your classic West Coast stuff. They don't have that. Like Air Raid's not that. It's, I like this matchup, I'm going to throw to him, but he's got to break here because he's got to break off based on leverage. So it's kind of a different, you kind of like, not necessarily wait and see, but a little bit of that. And so I say all that because when you're in college and you do that, you can then see like, okay, then you transfer into the NFL, who has kind of more, especially the system, more of like rigid footwork. That takes a lot to do. And so one of the things I think about Love, because you could see he had his first year in was his COVID year. He had
mhm.
a little bit of time. I think he came into a couple games. That second year, he came into the KC game off short notice because that's the week Rodgers got COVID. They did not really change up any of the stuff for him because they found out on Wednesday he was going to be starting that next Sunday. And then Steve Spagnuolo just blitzed the ever loving everything out of that man. And the line broke down. He couldn't do much. So I think like the Eagles game to me, it's some of that's instructive based on how did he look? How is his accuracy? There's still going to be questions from college. But to me, like you could see a guy who progressed in footwork, progressed in reads, progressed in kind of how he was supposed to play quarterback in this system as opposed to the air raid system he came from. And so, I mean, one of the things that I try to keep in mind as much as possible is that human element, the coaching element of that. It's not just the X's and O's. It's also if this guy progressed in these ways, that means he's taking a coaching. He's trying to get better at this particular thing. In the Eagles game, again, it was 9 throws. It was 10 drops, 10 passing drop back, something like that. It showed a guy who, if you just like his footwork, they ran on those 10 dropbacks, they ran maybe 4 concepts. That was it. Like they clearly was like, this is a Jordan Love package. If Jordan Love has to come in for Aaron Rodgers, they asked him, what are you comfortable with? What's the stuff you're comfortable with? And they just ran those things over and over again. And so early on, it was, okay, a 3-step drop here, 5-step drop here. But then later on, even as the Eagles kind of started rotating in to take some of the stuff away, you could see he had answers, and then he's moving the footwork and stuff accordingly. And so I think based on, again, you were looking at a very small sample size in that game, he was good. So maybe he'll be bad because some of his issues in college were accuracy, which sometimes that stuff doesn't get better. He'll overthrow a guy in the flat.
Mhm.
The footwork can help with that, but only to a certain extent. And sometimes he'd had a tendency to stare a guy down and not see a dropping linebacker and throw an interception. Like those were some of his couple of his major issues in college. That was there in his junior year when he didn't throw a lot of interceptions, and that was there in his senior year when he threw a lot of interceptions. And we haven't seen that in the pros. So when you ask if he can be good, that was a very long answer. My short answer is like, I believe he can, just because we've seen how far he's progressed. He's got the physical tools. I've always been a little concerned about, he's got a good arm as far as downfield throwing, but he doesn't necessarily have the zip on some of like the short and medium stuff. It's got kind of an arc to it, but we saw a
Mm.
little zip in that Eagles game. I think the placement looked good, which I still think there's going to be issues with that, but I think he's shown a guy who has taken to coaching. He's worked to try to get better at the things he needs to get better at, and clearly understands the system and at least the stuff he was running well enough to know that he had answers if a problem came up, that the first answer wasn't there, the second answer wasn't there. He didn't panic, and then he kind of knew what he was supposed to do, and the feet work were tied to that. So I think he's in a really good spot now. I mean, he's been in the league 3 years at this point, so you would hope he's prepared. But he seems like he's prepared. He's gotten better at the things you hoped you'd gotten better at, and so I mean, we could be in the second quarter of week 1 and going, oh, this guy can't play. But I think if you look at where he was in college and the little steps along the way, he's clearly taken, I think, very big steps. So I'm an optimistic person by nature. I think he could be good. I mean, I think this first year, like I'm going, hey, if he's in the top 15 of quarterbacks, if he's average, I think that's fine, because then I think you can grow on that a little bit. I don't think he's going to out and out stink, but I think he'll be serviceable, and I think they'll probably have training wheels in place to kind of help him along, especially early in the season. But I personally think he can be good. I don't think he's going to light anything up, but I think he can be good.
And that's the thing. I mean, I think even Rodgers was was inconsistent that first year as a starter. I think that was his year that he had the most interceptions, and so I mean, let's not forget that. But I look. I mean, young quarterback. I think one of those things. I think from a fantasy perspective, I think if you pick and choose the right games, maybe good matchups against teams with with maybe poor secondaries, home games. I think that's gonna be one of those things. I don't know if he's right now on Underdog. He is, let me see, I'm looking this up real quick as we go. He's going off as the quarterback 20, about 150 picks into it. So I mean, he's well into the draft. So he's in backup country. Or if you're playing 2 quarterbacks, he's a second quarterback. And I think he's a candidate to like have some spike weeks, because of what you were talking about. And you know what? I don't mind. From what you've seen, I mean, obviously you talked about footwork. Do you see him being much of a threat running the ball a little bit? Because he is athletic. He shows he's athletic.
Yeah. No, he can be. That's not something they asked him to do a whole lot in college, and it's not a whole lot we've seen in the NFL. We haven't seen a lot of anything in the NFL, but I think they can. And honestly, I think one of the things that I'm expecting to see a little bit more with this offense this year under Love that Rodgers didn't like doing is some more kind of vertical RPO stuff. And with that aspect of it, you can build in kind of at least the threat of a quarterback run, and then build in some of the other stuff I kind of anticipate from their offense. I mean, they're not. It's not going to be Jalen Hurts. It's not going to be Lamar Jackson. It's not going to be Josh Allen. Like, they're not going to be out there running him on sweeps, once a drive, 3 times a game, whatever. But he's a guy who can move, and I wouldn't be shocked to see, a few designed runs for him, because he can. I don't think he's not a burner, but yeah, he's athletic enough, and he's a pretty big dude. I think they'll use his legs, or at least the threat of his legs. I think we'll start seeing that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes, Burrow, those guys, they run 300, 350 yards in a season, and that just kind of takes enough of an edge off of the defense. I could see him doing something like that. So, okay, good. So Cheesehead Country can breathe a sigh of relief. In 15 years, this guy's going to get traded to the Jets, and
fulfilling the prophecy,
on his way to the Hall of Fames.
I'll take it.
Well, I think one of the things that's going to be really, really important to him is that running game, to kind of keep and I think underrated. That may be. I mean, just from outsider looking in, and I want to get your thoughts. The Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon running back tandem. I think. How important is it going to be to this offensive attack? Because this team, it was about 55-45 when run to pass. I mean, pass to run. Do you think they kind of keep the same ratio for the coming season?
I think so. There's some people I've heard chatter of, they're probably going to go more run heavy, and I don't see it personally, like, because they went a little run heavy when they wanted to. I still think it's going to skew a little more towards passing, just that's where we're at the offense. And like we said, Love is, I think, unless you have a quarterback who is a gifted runner, that's the way you should go. If you want to go run heavy, I think 55-45 is probably about the ratio you want, like the lowest you want to go on that side. But I think we will. We saw last year they wanted to get both of those running backs on the field at the same time, and the package just simply did not work. I think they went from 23% in week 1 and 2 out of that 21 personnel with both those guys to like less than 5 snaps for most of the season after that. So I think we may see a revamp in that package. So I think we will say probably likely both of those guys on the field a little bit more maybe this year, because hopefully we'll see a revival in that. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be huge. And Jones is that guy. I mean, he's one of the elder statesmen in that room now. They've gotten really, really young on both sides of the ball, really, but offensive side of the ball. Hopefully, team captain this year. I mean, just he's always like the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee out of the Packers. Like a really great dude, gifted running back, good receiver. I think he's lost a little burst, and so he's not quite the same weapon he was, but really, really slippery. I mean, I think those two guys work together so well. And Dillon came on a little slowly last year, and I know he's kind of talked about that this offseason. Some of the stuff he's working on, high knees, not getting taken down by ankle tackles. So I mean, I think they're going to be extremely important in both the run and pass game. Dillon came out of Boston College. He was not seen as a receiver, and that was the knock on him. He was like, well, they didn't ask him to do it. I think he had 3 targets in 3 years at Boston College, something like that. And I think his receiving stats weren't great, but there was 40 some odd balls thrown his way last year. I didn't catch a lot of them, but he's got decent hands, good speed in the open field. So I think both those guys are going to be weapons this year, and it's going to be important to get them going. I mean, for multiple reasons, but I do think that's for as much part of that's the wide receiver room. I love the wide receiver room. I like some of the guys there, the promise of the wide receiver room, I should say. I like some of what they have there, but I think if the offense is going to want to like stay on track, keep humming this year, I think Jones and Dillon unquestionably are the key to that. And I think the offensive line's in a pretty good spot this year as well. They had, Bakhtiari in and out, and they had some injuries and kind of played some guys in some weird positions early last year. And that didn't get, they tried some new stuff with the running game early last year that did not work, but they kind of settled into a nice little groove by the end of the year, found some concepts they liked. And I think with continuity in the offensive line, I mean, I think I don't know about the sky's the limit, but I think those guys are key, and I think they could be in line for pretty big years, just because I do think that running game's in a pretty good state with where the offensive line currently is. Knock on wood, because we've not had any injuries there so far.
Yeah, because injuries have played a part. I mean, Elton Jenkins,
Bakhtiari was a huge one.
Bakhtiari. Yeah, I mean that's monstrous. I always worry about those big guys when they get those. But he was on Rich Eisen and sounded healthy. It's funny, guys who are hurt don't seem to say yes to those interviews. So that made me think that he's feeling good. And I love the offensive line breakdown. Jones especially, I kind of feel like he might be a little bit underrated for fantasy this year. He's going off as I wrote this down as the running back 17. He's going about number 54 overall on 54 overall. And so, I mean, I still kind of see that, we didn't talk about him as a pass catcher. I think he's still going to be one of the most targeted running backs this year. Do you still see that?
Yeah, no, I absolutely see that. I think one of the things with Jones, I think him and Dillon split so much time. I mean, it's a very much a split backfield. So, I think Dillon gets more red zone touches, and then the Packers' red zone offense has not been good the past couple of years. So I don't know what his fantasy scoring has turned out to. It doesn't shock me that he's low, but yeah, he's a versatile weapon, smart dude, good enough. I mean, very good in pass pro, where you can kind of keep him in there 100% of snaps if you need to. If being tired is not a thing. But yeah, I think he's going to get a lot of. I didn't look to see what his targets were last year, but it seems like he's always seeing somewhere between 35 to 55 balls thrown his way, and he comes down with quite a few of them. So I do think he's going to be fairly high targeted this year.
Yeah, last year he got 43 targets. Okay. So caught 28 of them. So I think that's decent. I'll take that. I take 30 to 35 receptions from him. And I kind of last year I touted him, and I felt like I took an L, and then all of a sudden, like in the latter part of the season, he found a different gear, and that was the most important time for fantasy players, playoff time, and he seemed to deliver at that point. So only a partial L.
Listen, if it helped people in the playoffs, you count that as a W. I don't think you count that as an L.
Exactly.
Someone won because of you. Someone won a championship because of Aaron Jones. So take that win, man.
Yeah, definitely. So, you tease my next question. So the wide receivers, you like the wide receivers. I know Watson and Doubs, right?
Dobbs, yeah.
Watson and Dobbs, they had individual moments, and it seemed like they were never on the field. They were hardly
Yeah.
ever on the same field on the field at the same time. This season, it looks like they're both healthy. Watson had that incredible run of 7 touchdowns in 4 games, so definitely showed just how explosive an athlete he is. The one thing, like where he's being drafted right now, he's going with some players that I worry that they have more volume than him. What when it comes to Watson and Dobbs, can you give me an idea on the pecking order between the two of them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm way too high on Watson, man. I think that for me, the only thing holding Watson back at this point is health. Because he's had, he had injuries last year. He wasn't in training camp, so his early season stuff wasn't good because they weren't using him as a wide receiver. They were just running him on jet sweeps because he wasn't healthy. He didn't have the playbook down, and then he came on and just like you said, just an absolute monster. He looked like Randy Moss for 3 or 4 weeks in the middle there. But those injuries kind of crop up, and he had a couple issues with that in college as well. So I'm kind of that's my only concern with him as far as a wide receiver. Well, I guess hands as well, but that's kind of I'm not overly concerned about his hands. If you look at what he can do, his physical profile, what he can do, he's not just a burner. Like he can do everything. He can run in routes, he can run hitches. You can run him on those jet sweeps where they give him to him. Like they'll give him a lot of that RPO game they do, that little bubble action on the backside, and you just get it to a guy in space and let him work. Just an absolute monster in that. So like he can, as far as a wide receiver, sky's the limit for what that man can do. Like just an absolute freak show. And you could see him kind of catching that last year. So if he stays healthy, he could be incredible. I think the volume will be there. Again, unless they go like super, super run heavy, and I don't think they will. For me, looking at, and if you look at, I mean, some of the stuff he did last year, even some of the like the underlying metrics in terms of yards per route run. I think he was in the top 10 last year. If you look at DYAR, which is a cumulative stat, he was 28th in the league, and he missed quite a bit of time. Basically, if you look at a lot of those kind of advanced metrics, Watson grades out quite well on that stuff, and that's with missing training camp and missing time due to injury. So I think he's going to be very, very good, and I think he's the unquestioned wide receiver one. I think he's going to get the volume of a wide receiver one, provided he stays healthy. Doubs is a guy who I think he's a guy, and I think people in the Packers world, me included, are higher on him than the numbers suggest. He was a training camp darling. Everyone talking about Doubs part of it. Watson wasn't there, and he's doing it again this year. There's a lot of talk of love is finding Doubs like every training camp. Great connection to Doubs. Like it's 5 of his 6 targets went to Doubs. There's a ton of hype around him, and I think he's good. I don't know that he's the player that I thought he was going to be at college. He's got speed, functional speed, but not quite as fast as his 40 time suggested. Not quite as fast. I don't know if he had something going on. He got injured midway through the year, but even before that, he seems more of a possession type guy, which is good. Like I think what he plays off of Watson, I think their skill sets complement each other perfectly. So I think if he hits, they could be good. But again, that's the guy you look at like DYAR or DVOA. He was like 80th in the league among qualifying wide receivers last year, and he was fine at the beginning of the year. And then, like you said, like we were, as Packers fans, we were all excited. Like Watson and Doubs are finally getting on the field. And this was the midseason Detroit game. Right. Doubs got injured on like the first snap. It was a high ankle sprain. He was out 4 weeks, and he wasn't quite the same when he came back. So he's a guy that I think there's a lot of promise there in his college tape. You look at, some of the stuff that he did. He had a beautiful catch, a touchdown catch in Buffalo, where he used his speed, had the kind of like back shoulder kind of spinning. Like he's got a ton of talent. He just needs to be more consistent. And I think what they're going to ask him to do, I think he could be good. I think one of his issues is with Watson, the way they kind of use Watson, he's part of the concept a little more. And the Packers like to do a kind of a quads or a 3-by-1 look where you park one wide receiver on the backside. And that receiver's job is a lot of times is get open. You run a slant. If the guy's playing the inside, you run a fade, and that's your option away from the concept. If you don't like the concept, if you like that one-on-one matchup, you take that backside guy. And Doubs seems like the guy they kind of like doing that with. The problem is that he could not get off press, and teams figured that out later in the year. And so they got him as that backside X, and he's like, okay, this is the guy, whichever way he's parked, you read the leverage and go, and they would just beat him up at the line. He couldn't get off the line. So if he can get better with that, I think his numbers get a little better. But he's right now, I think he's a guy more, his hype is a little more than maybe what he is, which you're hoping for a jump this year too, and a bigger jump than maybe what he showed in year one. So I was really excited about Doubs. So I started looking at some more of the numbers, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't be quite as high on him as I am. I guess. I mean, I think that's a guy again. I think the volume will be there to some extent. I think Love likes him. It's just I don't know, man. And then the rest. The rest of it's young guys. It's
Right. Jaden
Samari,
Reed.
Jaden Reed, Samari Toure has been getting a lot of talk out of training camp. He was a 7th round pick last year out of Nebraska, and
Mhm.
he didn't do a whole lot in Nebraska because Nebraska never throws the ball, but he was kind of a sleeper. This guy's got a ton of talent, and they've been talking him up. I think he could have had, I think, 3 touchdowns last year, and Rodgers underthrew him or overthrew him on like 2 of them. Kind of a speed, take the top off the defense kind of guy, but he's a guy who you can kind of look at as a potential wide receiver 3 just because he's been in the system already a year, ton of hype out of training camp. That's a guy like LaFleur will talk about him unprompted. They're talking about something else. Like, I'll tell you, Samari Torres looked really good today. So take that for what it's worth, but he's got to keep an eye on. Then everyone else, yeah, it's Jaden Reed, it's Dontavian Wicks, it's Grant DuBose out of whoever is their 7th round pick out of Charlotte, who I really like, but hasn't really practiced much with them. So it's kind of who's the other guy I'm looking right now? Malik Heath is a guy who's been getting a little hype so far this year. Bo Melton is a guy from Oklahoma that they was drafted last year, and the Packers picked him up midway through the year and never made their active roster. But he's a practice squad guy, speedster guy, so he's another guy to keep an eye on. Like it's Watson, Doubs. Right now, I'm penciling in Toure as the 3, and the rest of them, it's like maybe the young tight ends will step up, but it's kind of a grab bag of dudes right now that you just don't know a ton about.
Well, let's talk about the tight ends.
Let's do it, man.
You got Musgrave and Kraft, and both got drafted in the 2nd round. Musgrave, had a couple of he had a huge game. I think it was against USC, and where he just destroyed them. Kraft coming from the same, from a tight end factory himself.
Mm-hmm.
What's the outlook? Because rookie tight ends, the track record is not great.
No, it's not. It's not, and that's what I keep trying to tell myself. And I think if I look at these 2 guys, I think long run, if both these guys hit what they could become, and Musgrave was a higher pick than Kraft, if both these guys hit what they could become in this offense, I think Kraft could be the better player because he's more. I know because he was South Dakota State. I know like Ross Uglum and Jacob Morley are 2 big Packers guys who cover North Dakota State, and so those teams are rivals. I'd always say like every time these teams met each other, Tucker Kraft was a dude who like we need to stop him. Alabama was throwing 6-figure NIL deals at Kraft, trying to get him to come for a senior year, and he didn't because he wanted to stay close to his family. He wanted to stay at South Dakota State. So, and he's more of kind of your typical inline tight end who just if you watch his college stuff, I don't know how much you watch Tucker Kraft. If you watch him get the ball in his hand and turn up field, dude looks like a monster. There's snow on the ground. It looks like it's frozen. I don't know who's going to tackle that guy. So I think if they hit their ceilings, I think Kraft is the player I kind of like more in terms of what he can give the offense. Musgrave's getting a ton of hype this year. And he's a guy, absolute freak. I think played 2 games last year because I think he blew out his ACL, if I'm not mistaken. But an absolute freak. I think set the record at the Senior Bowl for fastest tight end ever as far as speed test. And then you watch the videos of him in training camp and like just picture him running up the seam. He's got good natural hands, easy speed, like nice and smooth out of cuts. To me, if one of these guys rookie year this year, Musgrave has a higher chance of hitting just because I could see them saying, you're a receiver. You're not a tight end. You're a receiver. You do some of the stuff Alan Lazard did where you're inserting under, you fake play like your tight end, but really you're a big slot receiver this first year. And then we'll teach you the rest of the stuff. You run 4 routes and then we'll teach you being a tight end later. But I could see Musgrave having a pretty good year this year, just the hype. And then down the line, I wouldn't be shocked if Kraft is a better player. But for this year alone, I think it's Musgrave. Another guy to keep an eye on is DeGuara, who's kind of kind of like a hybrid kind of H-back guy who has never really gotten a chance. Fully convinced, I'm not the only one who thinks this, that Aaron Rodgers hated that dude's guts. Hated his guts. Never threw the ball. Every time Love was on the field, he'd find DeGuara. DeGuara had like an 80-yard touchdown off a tight end screen when Love was in the game. He's had nice catches under Love. I think Love was in DeGuara's wedding, so they're good friends. But he's kind of that more of a fullback move around piece. He'll line up as tight end. Very good stuff in the running game last year when they kind of remade their running game. DeGuara was a big part of that. So I think with Love on the field and DeGuara's role in the running game, I wouldn't be shocked to see him potentially be kind of more of an option in the receiving game as a tight end. DeGuara. So that's a dude to keep an eye on just because he's been there a bit more, even if he's not more of a traditional tight end.
And you know what, with LaFleur having really having a background in the he came from the Rams, but McVay coached with Shanahan, so they're both a
Well,
part of
yeah,
the
they coached
Shanahan.
together at Washington. He coached with
Right.
Shanahan at Washington, everything too. Yeah.
Yeah, so you look at that, you look at those guys, and it's like, that H back. You look at the way Kyle Juszczyk gets used with the 49ers, and I guess you could see some of that working with DeGuara, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think DeGuara lines up more. I actually looked at these numbers 2 days ago for something totally unrelated to this. DeGuara lines up more at tight end than Juszczyk. I think it's more of like a 50-50 between fullback and tight end when he's in,
Hmm.
when Juszczyk is more like 80% fullback. So that he does play more of a tight end role. But yeah, I mean, I think ideally his role is, and I talked about that 21 personnel earlier where they're trying to get Jones and Dillon on the field at the same time. It didn't work. That started working when they just were like, all right, we're not going to have one of these, instead of one of these running backs, DeGuara's our dude. And then DeGuara would play the role of whichever running back they subbed out for that.
Oh,
And then that package started looking a little better. So it was almost 21 personnel, but it was 12 personnel, but they just acted like DeGuara was a running back. And he
right.
did well in that. So I've got, I don't know about high hopes. I've got fairly high hopes for DeGuara this year.
Oh man, love it, love it. So we already hit the offensive line, so I think we're good there. I want to take a look at the defense real quick, because I mean this was one of the better defenses against the pass last year, but also pretty forgiving against the run. Kind of does
Very
it
nice
does
way
it
of saying that.
Yes, yes. Well, they weren't the Chargers or the Texans, but I had to watch that with the Chargers every weekend, and I was just like, "Stop the run!" So it wasn't to that level, but yes, I mean, this is a team that gave up over 2,300 rushing yards last year, collectively. What kind of what how did they shape up this year?
How do they fix it?
Yeah.
Man, I hope good. I mean, honestly, they're a team who has never really cared too much about stopping the run. But I mean, if you look at, I think by Football Outsiders, they were the worst. I think they were ninth against the pass and they were 32nd against the run. They were the worst team in the league against the run by Football Outsiders DVOA, and it looked every bit of it because they've not really cared about it, and they've not really they tried last year a little bit because the problem is their line. They had Kenny Clark on the line. And then everyone else is, we're going to try to get guys, mid-round guys or free agent guys that can help them. So last year it was second year TJ Slayton, and they signed Jaron Reed as a free agent. And they had, I think they still had Dean Lowry last year. And before that it was Tyler Lancaster. And let's get guys who are fine, maybe next to Kenny Clark, and then we'll do something. They didn't really do anything. The hope was last year, honestly. They drafted Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia, and they didn't play him.
Mm.
They still just, it was like they're going to run Jaron Reed out there, and every time Devontae Wyatt got on the field, he looked quite good. There were some issues, some talk last year, I think, of maybe some conditioning stuff or something. I don't know, but every time that man was on the field, he looked good. So the hope this year, we're crossing our fingers, man. Kenny Clark is good. He's getting a little older. He was drafted really young. Kenny Clark's still like 27 or 28 or something. He's on his third
Oh,
contract,
geez.
if I'm not mistaken. The hope is that, okay, Kenny Clark maybe doesn't have to be the man up front at this point anymore, because you've got Devontae Wyatt in his second year, hopefully ready to take on a full-time role. You've got TJ Slayton out of Florida, who I don't think is ever going to live up to some of the flashes we've seen, but he's a big dude and he's pretty good against the run. So, and then you also have a full year of Campbell, who kind of took a down step last year, and then Quay Walker, who showed flashes, but also like, I don't know, shoved a medical professional in the last game of the season and got suspended.
Oh,
Got
that's
suspended
right.
twice for shoving people out of uniforms last year. And so by all accounts, I mean, he's been very contrite, but he started showing flashes last year. And early in the year, Devondre Campbell was not all that great at linebacker, and part of the reason I think for that was they were using this the year before, they're using a lot of kind of like a penny front, which is basically a 5-man line with a single linebacker. And so they're like, you're the linebacker, you do your thing. Well, now they're pairing him with Quay Walker, and he's kind of teaching a rookie on the ropes. And it seems like he was a little uncertain where he was supposed to go and where Quay Walker is supposed to go. And so there's some uncertainty there. So I think this year, this is the path. Hopefully, for the path for them to be better is Kenny Clark is still Kenny Clark, but on top of that, he's got TJ Slayton in his third year, ready to take on a bigger role as a run stuffer. You got Devontae Wyatt coming in. You've got Preston Smith setting the edge. You've got Lucas Van Ness, the rookie that will likely be playing, I would think, quite a bit, with Rashawn Gary likely not ready to go, at least full speed right away on the other edge. And you've got two linebackers in the middle who know their roles a little better, rangy guys that you can kind of mix and match what they do. I think Quay's more of can be better in coverage, but both those guys can float to the ball. So the path for them to be good, the path for them to be good against the run is there. But you need quite a few things to hit, and you also need the coaching staff to say, we actually care about stopping the run sometimes, which has not been the case. And I mean, that's Joe Barry's there as defensive coordinator, is a big punching bag in Green Bay. And that's been one of the things. I don't think they care about stopping the run. They've got the personnel to do it. How they deploy it, we'll see. But I think there is a path for them to be better. They just have to like actually care to want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's one thing to want, one thing to say it, and one thing to actually do it. And yeah, just hearing that, I mean, it makes me feel good about still recommending running backs against them in the coming season. And,
oh, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
And I know Jair Alexander is he coming in pretty healthy? I know he's had some injuries in the last.
Oh yeah. No, I think he's coming in 100% healthy. He's been looking good in training camp. It's Jair. He's talking a big game. I think he's still Jair. I think he's going to be very, very good, and by all accounts, looks healthy this year, man. So we're hoping for another good year from him for sure.
Was he shadowing guys at his best, or was he more?
So that was the big thing, because week 1, I think it was week 1 last year, Justin Jefferson went nuts.
Oh yes,
nuts, and it was, I think Jair was on him barely at all. They're running kind of an off quarters look, and one of the problems with Joe Barry's defense, like the first year they're in Joe Barry's defense, they ran a lot of quarter stuff and they tackled well and they switched off their assignments on the back end really, really well. This past year, for whatever reason, they didn't do any of those things. They played a lot of soft quarters, but then they forgot what the assignments were supposed to be. Guys would get lost, safety gets pulled up, Justin Jefferson's up over the top. So the second time they played him, Jair basically said, "You're not doing this. I'm taking Justin Jefferson," and Justin Jefferson got held to like 1 catch or something. So the answer is no. He's not been shadowing guys unless he bullies the defensive coordinator into telling him to shadow guys. So hopefully we'll see more of that this year for sure.
I think one of the things that helps them, that's going to make things interesting this year. I mean, the last 2 years, they got Minnesota to come to them in week 17. I know it's week 17 because that's championship week, and people were like, "Oh my God, Justin Jefferson's playing in like 2-degree weather." But this time it's also week 17, but this time that game's going to be in Minnesota. So that'll be an interesting battle going on there. So, oh, mi amigo, love this. Oh man, I always so enjoy spending time with you. So, okay, we teased it a little bit. So, how were the birria tacos today?
Oh my gosh, so good. So good. Yeah, this was last year we talked, right? I had no idea
Yeah.
what you were talking about. You were telling me about the birria tacos. I got them the first time I ate them. I don't know. I can't remember if I told you this. I had a day off from the kids. They were being babysat. I went to go see a movie by myself, and I had just enough time to get birria tacos, so I ate them in a dirty movie theater parking lot, and they were amazing. And now there's a spot in the next town over. I don't know what the name of the place is. I just know they have a sign out front that says street tacos, and they've got birria tacos there. And yeah, it's every time I go there, which is too much at this point. It changed my life. I don't know if that's for the good or the bad of it, I guess, in terms of my cholesterol at this point. But yeah, dude, I mean, because I think I was telling you, I think I was always on barbacoa, because like
Right.
that meat is so good the way they do that. And you're like, oh yeah, if you like that, yeah, no, they were tremendous today, dude. Tremendous today.
Oh man, have you branched out to? I mean, to that place, do they have carnitas or al pastor?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if they have those?
They do.
So
I've not gone that route yet. Is that worth doing? Is that worth giving a shot?
those are two of my favorites.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd like to recommend a sampler plate, so that just you get
Okay.
a little variety, because you might end up going for seconds. Maybe go seconds on the birria tacos after that. So yeah, it's so good, so good, so good. Oh, mi amigo, this is awesome. This is awesome. So I want you to feel free, plug everything. And by the way, Familia, we're gonna get a little bonus coverage on a bonus episode on this. So you're gonna get 2 shots of Dusty on the Familia FFB YouTube page. So but first off, plug away what you got.
Yeah, no, I'm working on. I've got a couple things left over at Cheesehead TV that I'm trying to figure out what my next series will be. I got 2 different series going on right now. The Cheesehead TV one on Wednesdays is I'm looking back. It's called the Call Sheet series. I'm building a call sheet based on things that worked for the Packers this past year based on down and distance. So I've got 2 left, and they're both red zone. It's high red zone, low red zone. Packers were very bad in the low red zone, so I'm looking at kind of the Lions, what the Lions do last year, and kind of saying, here, try these things. So it's that's been really fun. That's on Wednesdays over Cheesehead TV, and the other one that's been a lot of fun has been I'm calling it Fact or Fiction, which is I'm kind of taking these Packers narratives that I see and then digging into the numbers and saying, is this actually true? I've done 2 of them so far. I need to get more. I think my next one's going to be on motion, but the last one I did was on this. This is over at Packer Report. The last one I did was on are the Packers better at running out of shotgun or under center? Because that's one of the complaints I hear is the Packers need to run from under center where they need to run from under center, and the numbers say no, they don't. So that's kind of one of those, like, I think they should run from under center. What does this say? And so that's been really fun, kind of a myth busting thing for me to see is are these narratives true? What do the numbers say on this? And then the last one is not Packers related at all. Over on, I've got a Substack that every now and then during the offseason I do something on where I'm looking at pony package stuff from throughout the league. Kind of stuff we talked about earlier, that 2-back stuff. It failed in Green Bay. It's been good other places. And I'm seeing, okay, I'm going to build a couple packages of that. Here's your pony package. Here's the stuff that worked, and kind of build a package out of that based on 7 or 8 plays or something. So I'm working on that now. Hopefully that'll see the light of day in about 2 weeks. But I always like seeing what other teams are doing because there's fun stuff going on in the league, dude.
Oh man, I love it. And this has been fun, beyond fun.
Agreed.
And I hope everybody doesn't mind the lightsaber that's over me. It's just a little bit of light that's creeping in. It's sunset time out here in California. So, but hey, please enjoy this. I hope you were looking at Dusty more than you were looking at me anyway, because much more interesting. Once again, really thankful to Dusty for jumping on with us. I want to make sure, again, if you haven't already, hit that subscription button. Subscribe to Familia FFB on YouTube. Go there. Also, if you want to see us on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your audio podcasts, this is also going to be on there. So if you want to listen to it there, you can subscribe there, and it'll just keep popping up on your phone. Lastly, also make sure you're following me at Jorge Martin 17 and keep pushing all the content out there. FamiliaFFB.com on YouTube. Just enjoy it there. So once again, muchas gracias. Keep up with this NFL Insider Series. You're going to enjoy it. And remember, todos somos familia. Salud.